We're back live, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Mythicist Milwaukee Show. I'm your host, Rob Moore, the Deacon of Doubt. With me, as always, my co-host with the mo-host, Brian Edwards. He's living the life of Brian, and he is the Imam of Incertitude. How are you today, Brian?
That's what we're saying. I'm fired up today.
It's a nice one today. You're a fanboy of our guest today, and I do want to mention that we are broadcasting, as always, from the Grand Avenue Mall location, Bucketworks, upstairs from the TJ Maxx here in beautiful downtown Milwaukee, where it's an absolutely gorgeous fall day. It was 63 degrees and sunny, the sun coming in at that low angle. Just too much to ask for here in November. And speaking of which, we want to be thankful for what we have on a beautiful day where we're safe at home, considering the recent events across the Atlantic in Paris, related, of course, to religious fundamentalism. I'm getting fired up again about why we do what we do. So you got any quick thoughts on that? Absolutely tragic circumstance in Paris, Brian. Ridiculous to see.
Yeah, well, it's certainly unfortunate. But we had also, this one's getting a lot of attention. The Yazidi were also plagued by ISIS, which didn't get as much attention, but we definitely want, people to hear about this and know the underlying causes.
Well, it brings it on home. If they can hit Paris, they can hit London, they can hit New York, as they have, and it just reminds us again of why we do what we do, and we're here to support in any way we can. Mythicist Milwaukee is brought to you by, of course, the Mythicist Milwaukee Show, I should say, is brought to you by Mythicist Milwaukee, the leader in the local free thought movement. Our guest today is a very special YouTuber. He's got 59,000 or so followers, subscribers, or 52,448 out here I'm looking at right now. Amazing, something to aspire to. He's calling us from Kent, England. He's TheraminTrees. Welcome, Theramin. Are you there?
Hello. Lovely to be here. I'm great fans of yours, by the way.
Thanks for joining us, and thank you for that. We're going to call him Link. It's his real first name, I'm guessing, is Link, yes?
Yes. Yeah.
And he chose the name TheraminTrees for a reason undisclosed as of yet. Brian and I have been having a competition all week. We're going to guess what TheraminTrees could possibly mean. Brian, what is your guess?
As it relates to religion and superstitious beliefs that perhaps theramins, the instrument, actually might grow on trees.
Okay, good enough. We have theremin. Maybe some of the listeners don't even know a theremin is a really obscure instrument that makes a wah wah sound, right? It changes pitch somehow in a weird electronic sounding way. And trees, of course, are...
Yes, Bernard Herrmann used it in his Atheist still.
Yes, in a famous episode of a popular sitcom, which I don't watch. What's the stupid thing called with Sheldon?
Big Bang Theory.
He played the Star Trek theme.
Big Bang Theory.
Yeah,
Big Bang Theory.
He played the Star Trek theme on a theremin, which maybe it was actually performed on a theremin. It's one of those sounding sounds, the Star Trek theme. The opening. Yeah. So there you go. My own guess is that on a trip to the Southwest, our guest imbibed Native American hallucinogen on a vision quest in a sweat lodge and saw a tree growing theramins.
Impressive.
Now, can you tell us what the real reason is?
Well, it's just going to be so deflating after those wonderful imaginative ideas. It started out as therapy trees. Because I was training as a therapist at the time, and I was looking at the different branches of therapy that were available, and I was doing integrative therapy, so I was bringing those branches together. And then I thought, well, I really love the Theramin, and I did a kind of portmanteau of therapy and Theramin, and it was a private email address. I never intended it to be public at all, but I just started up a YouTube channel and just called it that, and I had no intention of ever uploading any videos or anything. So it was completely a private, private reference with no meaning whatsoever.
Well, we appreciate
no
that.
Profound meaning.
I'm a language guy, and I love the way that we all do that. We have our little personal colloquialisms that we sort of play with the words in our lives and make little things. So that's makes perfect sense to me.
The moral of the story is read a marketing book prior to creating the email address.
Yeah, I mean, I had the email address for a good couple of years, and I started on YouTube just using it as what many people use it as, a resource for music videos and old TV clips. childhood favorite TV, and that's all I used it for. When I started uploading videos, I wasn't aware that anyone else was doing it at all. It was just, the opportunity to upload was there, and the drive was there because I'd recently, the situation in the US, the anti-atheist feeling, and I thought, well, I can upload a video, so I'll just make one and upload it. And I wasn't aware of an atheist community at all at that stage. I mean, this was 2007, so it was very embryonic anyway. I don't know if you guys were into the atheist community at that time.
That predates us.
Yeah, it really does.
Really, yeah.
It's the whole thing. Do you see it as a movement now that you're in it, or is it? I'm always wondering if the movement existed before I got in it. You know what I mean? It's only been a couple of years, and it seems like it's gaining momentum. Or is that just my subjective view?
It's strange. I think whenever a group comes together, you have this process of forming, storming, and norming, and you come together, and there's a lot of great fellowship. Certainly, a few years ago, there was a fantastic sense of camaraderie between the atheist channels that I experienced anyway. And then I started kind of seeing a lot of infighting as people kind of settled in their various kind of subgroups, I guess, with their sub-interests. And I guess it's kind of been a bit of a churny, choppy sea since then. We're always having issues come up that either divide us or unite us. But I think that's healthy. I think if we can be a community that can contain those kinds of discussions, then that's brilliant. My whole thing is that, I don't want to be in a group that has to conform. I don't want to be in an authoritarian structure. So I'm quite happy for any kind of infighting to go on, as long as we're all able to express those individual voices. I think where it will kind of be detrimental is if any voices are silenced in that process. I think that would be a tremendous shame. But that's my take on it anyway.
That sounds awesome. What was your first video that you put out, by the way? I've watched all of them, I'm certain, and they're really, really good. We encourage our listeners to check them out. He's jumped to my favorite YouTuber status for sure. And I wonder what was the first that you put out?
Well, the first video I put out was, it was a very rambling to cam video called Acceptable Prejudices. And it was, as I said, it was at this time where I had just seen music videos and TV videos, and I'd started watching some American stuff. There was an HBO series called Deaf Poetry with slam poets, And I really took to this because poetry can be arid, dry, really duff stuff out there, full of esoteric references and obscure classical nods and what have you. But this was really intense, passionate, accessible stuff. And I started watching more and more of it. And then there was this one poem where a woman was talking about all the things that she would like to see happen. And she came out with this line, she wanted atheists down on their knees in front of her God. And I was really taken aback by this. And also, there was wild approval from the audience of this line. And I thought, my immediate response was, this must be a private joke. I mean, you get countries that have common languages, but even within those countries, you have, in jokes or private jokes within a country that everyone gets, that are kind of impenetrable to the rest of those countries. And I thought maybe this is the case here, that, there's been some big joke about atheism in the media over in the US, and, people are just being very self-conscious and postmodern. And it was really depressing when I started looking into it and seeing that, no, this was real. This was anti-atheist sentiment. And that famous kind of statistic on being the most distrusted, I think I want to get that wording right, group in the US. and suddenly I had to downgrade my view of our collective progress by several decades. I thought, my goodness, this is where we're at now. I was really disappointed, but it really kind of galvanized me, and that's what I just did a 10-minute piece on this prejudice and just saying, you know, let's live and let the start of an ongoing conversation I've had really for 8 years, because I just respond. The videos that I do are just responses to the responses that I get. So, you know, I would have had certain responses to that video, and that would prompt the next video, and it kind of moves on in a kind of organic way. But that's how it started. It was a horrifically rambling piece. I mean, you know, I hadn't done any kind of presentation before that, and I was explaining what I was going to say, how I was going to say it, all before I said it, you know, and I hate those videos, you know, you can just skip through them.
Yes, no, it's in stark contrast to everything else that you produce, where I've found I best remember when I actually take notes. It's really brilliant the way you're able to explain some of the tactics and why religion is such a hook. The manipulative tactics sometimes that are used, you really present in a wonderful way, and I really want to get into those. But could you summarize like your journey to atheism? Your 2 videos.
I'm sorry, you just went matrixy on me. What was that?
Oh,
could I summarize?
Instruction Manual for Life and Losing Faith, I think, cover your journey to atheism. And I wondered if you could give us some highlights there. I definitely encourage the readers or the listeners to watch these. They're impressive, but I wonder if you could cover some of that for us.
Cover some of the journey?
Yes.
Okay. I guess Instruction Manual to Life is an 8-minute metaphor-based animation, kind of dealing in a much more abstract way with my journey from Christianity into atheism. Losing faith is much more literal. It takes the viewer through various periods of thought. I describe myself as a double dipper when it comes to coming out of religion, because there were 2 periods in my life where I was going to make a break for it, in effect. I didn't know in both cases that I was walking out the door, but in both cases I was definitely walking out the door. The first time was when I was around 6, and I started asking a lot of questions. The question that really brought things to a head with my family was when I started asking about Noah and the Ark. And I asked a particular question there about God's power, which really seemed to change the whole dynamic. We've been told a child-friendly version of Noah and the Ark, and that in itself is really suspicious. You know, why do you have to make up a child-friendly version?
Mm-hmm.
In the biblical versions, we know God creates the flood deliberately to wipe out the entire population of the earth. But in this child-friendly version, God just saw the flood coming. It was something that was out of his hands, and he did what he could to warn everyone. He gave the news to Noah and asked Noah to disperse it, but they wouldn't listen to Noah. And in this version, you know, God was just as sad as everyone else. And I do find that really strange. You know, why tell that distortion? But anyway, it led to various questions about, you know, how you could cover the planet in water. Where did this rain come from? But then I compared it with the story of Moses parting the waters and said, you know, well, if Moses could have the waters parted for him, why couldn't God part the waters for the rest of the planet? You know, why was he not powerful enough? And I think it was that question that really hit home. with a relative of mine who was just immobilizingly hostile in response to that. And then I kind of stopped enjoying religion. I mean, to me, it had been quite fun up until that point, and we were singing songs in school that were really fun, and doing plays, and it had all been very kind of sing-song and very lively. But then suddenly I wasn't allowed to ask questions anymore, and it became very oppressive. And I asked to stop going to church, and I was told in very certain terms that I would have to stay in church. But that was the first point where I was really walking out the door. And unfortunately, I kind of, because I was forced at that point to stay within church, I kind of developed a Stockholm syndrome response, which was kind of, when you're in situations that you can't escape, you often find ways of turning them around to your advantage, or at least making them bearable. And so I started really trying to engage with church. And I started coming up with all there are various rationalizations that are offered to you anyway. One of them that was commonly stated was that your spiritual maturity is reflected in not asking questions. And I thought, well, okay, that serves my purpose. Yeah, and I remember actually the moment where that really took hold. I was in a church service with some other members of school, and I just sat around looking around at the other children, and I thought, yeah, I could be quite spiritually mature, and that really appealed to me as a child. I wanted to be seen as mature. So I said to myself, yeah, I'm going to go with this thing of not asking questions. That will make me seem really spiritually mature, and I'll get the respect of the adults and all kinds of stuff. And a whole load of rationalizations just kind of gushed in at that point. It was like, letting the barriers open. And that kind of kept me really hooked to religion for a good 6-7 more years. And then my second time where I was, which led to my eventual departure, was when an RE teacher asked me a very innocuous question, or so I thought at the time. I'd wrote a really pompous little essay on why I was a Christian and why no one was ever going to challenge that. Thank you very much. I have kept that essay, and I look back on it, and it's a cringe fest. But
you were about 10 or 12 at this time?
I was about 12, yeah. But I'd ended it. I am a Christian, and this is always going to be the case.
And this was RE. I'm going to translate. RE is religious education.
Yes,
teacher.
it was in RE, and the teacher just left a very simple comment. He just asked me why I believed what I believed, and it struck me at the time. Oh, I can understand. That's no problem at all. But I found that the answers weren't forthcoming. And I started to panic over a number of days, because I really began to want to answer this question, certainly within the week, because by the next RE lesson, I really wanted to have a strong rationalization to offer. But I couldn't come up with anything, and I really started panicking over the week. I was asking people at Christian Union, which was a school club that I went to at lunchtimes. They couldn't come up with any convincing answers, and I felt really hoodwinked by that, because a lot of them had come out with some quite bold claims that God had spoken to them in very direct ways. But when I pushed them on this, when I said, well, how has he spoken to you? It turned out that all they meant was, well, certain things have happened in my life, and I just think God was trying to tell me something. I thought, yeah, you liar. You would never say that about, someone who was actually in your life, someone who had supposedly asked you to do something. You wouldn't then backtrack and say, well, they just gave me this impression from the way they acted that they wanted to do it. You would never say explicitly, they told you to do that thing. I thought, the way that people are using language here is really not on, because I never did that. I always took things at very face value when it came to religious assertions like that.
So you're religious.
So I suddenly, sorry?
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
I suddenly felt quite betrayed by that, because I thought I've been really open with you lot. And I've been waiting to have all these wonderful experiences that you say you've had. And actually, you've had no more experiences than me. So it was a very disorientating time as well. It was kind of, in many respects, it was losing all of the anchors that I thought I had. And eventually I just started thinking, right, I have to knuckle down. I have to really figure out my own reasons here, because I can't rely on anyone else. So I just set to and started looking at why I actually believed. And it was through that process that I, without even knowing it, I just ended up in the atheist space. I've said before that I became an atheist while I wasn't looking.
Right.
And I think that's a point that kind of comes out in a lot of my conversations, that if I'd been aware of atheism, which I hadn't at the time, I didn't know that it was possible not to believe in a God. If I had been aware of atheism, my defenses might have been up. I might have seen myself going towards it and thought, I don't want to go there. But because I didn't even know that atheism was a possibility, I mean, God was just, a fact to me. I just had to figure out why I believed him, but he was a fact, like Australia, So my defenses were right down, and I think that played a part in lubricating my exit, as it were.
I think so. And in your video, you do a wonderful job of kind of creating this by walking down a hallway on your journey.
Yeah.
And in one case, I think you open a closet and find out and make the assertion that faith is not a virtue, and that rather faith can be the perfect disguise for lies. Tell us what you meant there.
Well, faith, that was one of the creepiest moments I've said in my journey. As I said, I accepted faith being a virtue as a sign of spiritual maturity. So that concept kind of went off limits from that point. I didn't scrutinize that concept at all. It kind of became ring-fenced. So it was just a concept that was in place for several years. Faith is a virtue. But I just turned my attention to it again. And I reasoned that actually it was the perfect system for protecting lies. Because how do we detect lies? We detect lies from the presence of conflicting evidence or the absence of expected evidence. That's how we detect lies. Faith demands that you ignore both of these. So in doing that, you cut yourself off from the detection of lies. And it really struck me that, any superhuman, super intelligent being that would impose such a system where lies are off limits, where a preacher or a priest or whoever, your parent, can tell you a lie and you're expected to just ignore any inconsistencies. That is a template for abuse. And it really hit me in that moment that I was dealing with something very wrong, very distorting, and I couldn't make sense of it. At the time, I mean, I say in the video, it was quite a generous interpretation on my part, but I thought, well, this has to be a joke. And that kind of echoes my what I spoke about earlier with the US, thinking that had to be a joke. The anti-atheist sentiment expressed there. That's my go-to response when I come up against really terrible pieces of news. I think, first of all, it has to be a joke. And I figured that it was just a big hoax on the part of adults. It was a kind of rite of passage. I think that's how I conceptualized it. That we'd had forerunners. We'd had things like the Tooth Fairy, and Father Christmas, the Easter Bunny. And those were kind of forerunners. They were the practice runs. So I thought, well, this must be the same thing, but this is the big test. And once you pass this, then you're kind of welcomed into the club.
That's awesome. I love this part.
It's mad. But a few people have been in touch since I put that out there. A few people have been in touch to say that's exactly what they thought.
Wow. I mean,
mad, isn't it?
You guys were smarter than me. I didn't get this until my 30s.
I wanted to clarify about the religious education class. Was that in your school? You were at your regular, what we would call public school here that you went to, or was that in Sunday school or church school?
That was in regular school.
So at 10 or 12 in your school, you had a religious education class, and that's something that we don't really get in America, and something that I push for personally as mythicists here. We feel that younger children should be exposed to all ancient philosophies so that they can then be better equipped to, if you want to grow up and weigh those things out yourself and choose one to believe in, then that's your own business. But really, the indoctrination of children to me is child abuse, and robbing kids of the ability to think critically is a real problem here in America. Do you think that part of the problem is that you can't ridicule people's beliefs, or it's taboo to make fun of religion? It's something that people shy away from and has become socially unacceptable. Do you think that we need to break that taboo a little? Is it okay to ridicule religion?
It is absolutely essential that we ridicule religion. I mean, it's more than, whether or not it's acceptable or not. It's crucial that we do. I mean, I'm absolutely with you on religious indoctrination of children being abuse. That's sometimes kind of criticized as an overdramatic statement. I don't think it's overdramatic in the slightest. You wouldn't take a child along to a political rally and demand that it participated in politics, the politics of your party. Why? I mean, the only reason that we accept it is because it's always been done. If it was introduced now and it had never been done, it would be seen for what it is, an abuse. But because it's always been done, it's like many things that have been always done. There are excuses and rationalizations for it. Child genital mutilation for religious purposes is obscene. It's obscene. And the rationalizations for it are pathetic. I've spoken to people, and said, well, why don't you? I mean, there are people out there who acknowledge that this is something that, in an ideal world they wouldn't want to do, but they say that they feel compelled in a way because their culture does it, and they don't want to be seen to cut across their culture. And also they present the rationalization that, for instance, if a boy isn't circumcised, then he's going to appear different to all his relatives, and he's going to feel the odd one out, and he's going to feel weird. That isn't good enough. That kind of rationalization is not good enough. You work past that rationalization. You say, well, you explain to your child, you are special. We've been doing this to children for countless centuries. We've decided, because it is an abuse, that we're not going to do it to you. You are special. You explain it to people. You find reasons to make it work. You don't find reasons to perpetuate abuse,
Right. And I think you indicate, too, that the need for criticism of these beliefs go up when they have increased impact on other ideas, they increase power and influence, and the more that belief dehumanizes. And I think all of these are really good points that you make dramatically.
Yes, I mean, religious beliefs have a huge knock-on impact on people's lives. Anything that has a huge impact on people's lives needs scrutiny. The greater the power and influence involved. I mean, I always think, I mean, my overarching interest is manipulation, but religion is a cornucopia of manipulative strategies, and they're a level of manipulation which the earthly con artists can only dream of. You know, the people who sell us lemon-scented cars, who sell us pyramid schemes, snake oil, they always have to live with one eye over their shoulder because the people who they've sold their goods to are coming after them. But if you can make people believe in an afterlife and you can defer all of those threats and, goodies and all of the stuff that you're selling into an afterlife, then you can relax because no one's going to come after you. And I think with systems that enjoy such gargantuan carrots and sticks, it is essential that we address them in the strongest terms. Don't have any time with, religious petticoat sensibilities. I think it's really crucial. And I mean, we're seeing the results of where this can go. I mean, religion to me is like a magnifying glass. If you take good beliefs and you put them through that magnifying glass, then that's great. But the thing about religion is that there is no agreement. Even within a religion, even within a specific denomination of a religion, you have vacillations all over the place on various policies. So there is no consistency. And the result of that is this kind of chaos that you get with religion, and magnified chaos.
Yes.
Because it isn't just backed by, the authority of a learned human. It's backed by, God's authority. And who can challenge that?
Well said. You're listening to Link. He's TheraminTrees on YouTube. It's the Mythicist of Milwaukee show. I want to remind everyone to go to our website, mythicistmilwaukee.com, find the links to our Patreon page, and support our efforts, which include bringing you exciting guests and another first for Mythicist Milwaukee. This is, in fact, TheraminTrees' first podcast interview ever. Really proud and honored.
It is, and you're being lovely and gentle with me.
Well, like a lot of our guests, you're a guy who can just go. We give you could talk for the whole hour.
I could talk the ass bone off a giraffe if you let me.
Well, all of us could, so I have to bite something in order to let guests keep speaking. It's my problem. But I know we appreciate a guy like you who's absolutely, you're fascinating, full of information, and a different take on what all of us have gone through here to come to atheism, secularism, and whatever it is that we identify ourselves at. While I bring that up, I assume you're probably a mythicist too as well. We like to ask our guests, do you know what that is, and do you subscribe to the Christ myth theory?
I'm only beginning to look into that. I mean, it was your YouTube channel name that made me look that up for the first time. So I'm only really beginning to dip into that. I've seen a couple of videos about it. My understanding, I should say, is that it's regarding the claim that Jesus even existed as a person. Am I right?
That's exactly it. And most biblical figures, if not all of them, including Muhammad himself, too.
Oh, right, yeah. He would be as real as, say, Zeus was real, that there's no historical basis.
Yeah. I don't have a position on it yet. I mean, I guess my position has tended to be, when I'm discussing these topics with Christians, that I give as much leeway as I can, and I grant as much as I can, because I think as much as you grant, you will never get there. So I can afford to be generous in arguments. I can afford to give quite a lot. And so that brings in Jesus and I will grant to a Christian that he might have existed as a person. But I don't believe that. I reserve belief on it because I don't know, and this is the stance that we should all take on anything that we don't know, So I'm absolutely fascinated to hear the arguments for and against. And I'm not, when people say, oh, all of the major scholars of the Bible agree on this. I hear those statements, and I'm not necessarily convinced by them. In many cases, they're just rhetoric, and I don't like statements like that. Statements that collect all of a scholarship on a particular subject. So I'm fascinated to hear more about mythicism, and I think it is important. I mean, if it can be established that there is little reason to believe that Jesus was actually even a person, then that's something important. That isn't trivial.
Tell us about your church a little bit more. I'm assuming Church of England is what they made you go to.
Church of England, yes, but with a strong undercurrent of Catholicism from my mother's side of the family, Irish Catholics.
So growing up in that,
and sorry,
I'm wondering, growing up in that faith, what was the philosophy of the church more or less conservative? I'm assuming that the Church of England has accepted evolution, much as the Catholic Church has as official doctrine. Is there any sort of fundamentalist movement in that church, or were you allowed to, as a child in church at least, take the Bible stories as metaphors and allegories and sort of make what you want about of the philosophy, as I was in mainline Protestant sects here in America?
Right. Yes, there was a degree of latitude granted, but I didn't get the impression ever when I was in the C of E that there was one firm doctrine on many stances. I think there was a level of variety there. I don't think it was that fundamentalist in terms of just having really central doctrines that everyone had to adhere to. It seemed to be, I won't say free and easy, because my experience certainly wasn't free and easy. But there were lots of different elements, lots of different takes, and no one was really punished or shamed, for not adhering to a particular belief. It was fairly eclectic, but the strain that I was brought up with was unfortunately quite a strong one, because of this streak of Catholicism. Mm-hmm. My mother had actually been excommunicated because she had divorced.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was she Irish then, by chance?
She wasn't actually Irish. She was born in London, but all of her family, her mother. And she was excommunicated for divorcing a guy who was an alcoholic and gambled all of their money away and left them destitute, left my mother destitute with two daughters. So added to all of the terrible things that she went through, and she would forego meals on a regular basis just to see that her daughters were fed. Added to all of that, she was excommunicated from the church. What an amazing show of Christian love.
Wow. Yeah, kick a woman when she's down.
In retrospect, you can count that as a positive. I know it doesn't help in the moment, but
yeah, you could. I don't think she saw it.
I know,
but yeah. But so I think she was carrying the vestiges of her previous faith with her, and was a lot more hardline than your typical C of E person was. I mean, the C of E have a very milk and water image in this country, very kind of diluted. Although you get extremely isolated authoritarian types within it. The system itself doesn't seem to be that authoritarian. But it's possible, to grow up in a church environment like this, like I did, and still feel kind of cocooned because you're not aware of any other options. You're not aware. I mean, you spoke about religious education in schools, and I think that's really important because it was only then, when I was about 11, when I was introduced to religious education, that I was exposed to other religions. I was aware of Judaism just because of the Bible, but I didn't know it meant religion. I had a Muslim friend. I knew it was something important because my grandmother was afraid that my grandfather would kill my Muslim friend when he found out that he was Muslim. So I knew it was something very important, but I didn't really know what that meant. It was only when I actually got some education, started to see, oh my goodness, there was an explosion of these same kinds of ideas.
Right.
And everything began to decenter. And I think that's really important, that for a long time in life, if you're exposed to just one religion, you become, everything orbits that religion. And when you start seeing that there are other constellations out there, everything starts to become a little bit more relative. And I think that's really, really crucial. I would love to see religious education start a lot earlier for that very reason. If you're going to start indoctrination earlier, and if we can't somehow outlaw that abuse, then let's try the other way and let's try to at least provide education about all the other religions as soon as possible, so that at least you have some action going in the other direction,
That's exactly what we're talking about. Go ahead, Brian. You got a question?
Yeah. Well, what about educating or what you talk about in your videos, like how to avoid being manipulated? Your bending beliefs is a wonderful video, and you talk about understanding that you can be manipulated is the first step. Could we do that, or are the kids too young to get that?
I think very young children have amazing potential for all kinds of stuff. One of the really interesting moves that I heard about a few years ago was by a school that introduced counselling to really young children, kind of nursery level children, 5, 6, 7, 8. And they really took to it. They took to that whole communication system of stopping, listening to each other, empathizing. And I think, there are so many things that are so important to introduce at a young age. Logical skills, I think, really need to be part of the curriculum. They just don't seem to be. I don't know where they would fit in, what particular subject, but skills in logic, skills in communication, skills in life. I mean, you have lessons, some of them in the UK, I don't know if you get them in the US, called life skills, and they don't really teach you much at all. And I think, childhood is a time when you can really cram a lot of really important information in, and it does have to be through schools, I think, because left to parents, you really, of those parents' whims, their particular prejudices. We still have many parents who seem to feel that their children are their possessions, or the little versions of them to be molded, instead of these strangers who you get to know. I mean, I much prefer that perspective, that a child is a stranger that you get to know. Obviously, you have to provide boundaries, but you don't force someone into a nature that isn't theirs. For instance, you look to see what is that child's nature. I'm really glad to see a lot of issues coming out, let's say, around transgender children, where that discussion is happening now, and it's happening at a really young age. But I think it's really important to address these things in childhood and to look after children, because children really have to defend themselves. You know, their only power in many circumstances is to just keep secrets.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, it's time for
that's a terrible. Sorry, you were saying?
No, that's all right. It's 2:45 already, and it's fascinating listening to you. And of course, with your accent, most Americans could probably sit and listen to you read the phone book. We love it, so we can let you talk. But got to get a station break in here. You're listening to the Mythicist Milwaukee Show. I want to remind everyone to like us on YouTube, and we appreciate your support of our and your kind words about our YouTube channel. Of course, we've debuted our own satirical series of videos called "Holy Shit." Ridiculing religion, plenty well right there. So everybody go and
what are your thoughts on that?
And like that.
I think it's a fantastic series. It's I think you've done 3 episodes so far, haven't you?
Yes.
The Holy Shit, 10 Commandments, 10 weirdest commandments, 10 weirdest biblical creatures, and the top 10 killers in the Bible.
That's right.
And I think it's brilliant. I mean, it really brings. It harks back to what we were talking about ridiculing what is worthy of ridicule. And they're brilliant little skits. Is it Joseph who presents them?
Father
really
Joseph.
Fantastic.
We're lucky to have him working with us, local filmmaker, and we're actually working on a feature-length film called Batman and Jesus, where we're going to kind of redo the Zeitgeist movie, part 1, where we expose the world to mythicism and the way that myths evolve into cultural touchstones and in fact become reality for some people. But we're running out of time here. It's time for a little thing we like to do called Myth of the Day. Here is Mythmeister Antonio with today's episode of Myth of the Day. Take it away, Antonio.
Well, thank you again, Link, for being here. This is a really special show for us. I'd like to start out before the Myth of the Day, thanking some individuals that have retweeted or liked your presence on our show today. Poro Kilgore with over 12,000 followers. Imperator Letha with over 11,000 followers. Godless Engineer with over 5,000 YouTube subscribers, or nearly 5,000 YouTube subscribers. Free Thought Alliance of Milwaukee. James Kirk Wall, author and blogger. Kenosha Racine Area Freethinkers, Kryptonian Atheist. Joseph Magistro. Miguel Connor, host of Aeon Byte Radio, and Omaha Atheists, who are the facilitators of Aposticon. Connecting to the conversation earlier regarding Moses and Noah, the religious lawgiver is the person that speaks to God and brings back the laws of God to the people. This motif is repeated over and over again throughout history. We can see this with Sargon of Akkad before 2000 BCE. In this case, he was also played in a reed basket in order to avoid infanticide and was set adrift in a river where he was rescued by a royal midwife. We also see it with Minos of Crete and Manu of India. Regarding Noah, you need to look no further for a pre-Christian source for this deluge than the Epic of Gilgamesh. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the story talks of a great flood commanded by God, an ark with the saved animals upon it, and even the release and return of a dove, all held in common with the biblical story, among many other similarities. Regarding Jesus, there are no primary sources providing that Jesus actually existed. No legal documents, no glyphs, no papyri, no statuary coins, nothing. All you have to go on is hearsay, the bulk of which is secondary, tertiary, and so on. Now, my personal question for you is, you initially did not foresee yourself creating videos online, but at this point, do you have a little bit of a competition, or do you collaborate more with your brother, Qualia Soup? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, Qualia isn't making videos at the moment, but we're looking forward to collaborating on a couple of projects. It's always fantastic fun working with him and really just thinking about the whole creative process. But he started a little time after I did, and kind of, had a similar experience. We were both, when we started uploading, we were both thumbed down into the ground, had tremendous hate going on. I was pursued by a group called the Guild of Christian Assassins, and Doug, whose channel is Qualia Soup, he was also inundated with hate. But, you know, thanks to the supporters, that was soon kind of counterbalanced. But, you know, we've always just responded to what has come our way. So it's been a constant kind of conversation with the people who are corresponding with us. And that's the way it's always gone. It's always been very organic. We've always done videos when we wanted to do them instead of just contrive something, you know, and I think that makes a difference, because then your motivation is there. Then you're really doing something because you've got something to say, and I think that really shows, you know.
Speaking of doing something, we only got about 10 minutes left. I want to ask you what you're able to do with the big dog of atheism over there. Involved with the Richard Dawkins Foundation at all?
Yes, yeah. A few months ago, a lovely person called Stephanie Guttormson, I think I'm pronouncing it right, I hope so, got in contact, who's an operations director over in the Foundation for Science that they run, and that was amazing. They wanted to give me an endorsement on their site. I haven't really done anything with them so far. We've spoken about maybe doing some animated videos, which I would love to do. It's just finding the time, because at the moment this isn't a full-time job for me. I'm having to work around work still, but increasingly I'm getting more time. But I would love to work in a more collaborative way. I love collaborations. I mean, you know, collaborations of all kinds with other YouTubers. I've always found that tremendously stimulating. Just bringing together two different sensibilities, you produce something that can be quite removed and quite alien. So I really like working with other people. It appeals to my extrovert side.
When we know you've gotten some good feedback. In fact, one religious person claimed that you were even using satanic mind control in your videos, and then realized she just was compelled by the argument.
Yes, incredible. People get in touch with me, and sometimes someone will steamroll in on a wave of hate, and just come at me, you know, with obviously a tremendous kind of swell of emotion behind it. And then I'll hear nothing from them for months, and then they'll come back to me, private message me or whatever, and say, I was really going through a crisis. There was some particular image or phrase that I might have used that really started something going in them, and they really resented it, but they've worked through it. But there was one person who thought I put satanic mind control techniques into my videos. She was convinced that this had happened, and she had been told that this is what atheists did, that they used some kind of linguistic programming or whatever, or some hypnotic technique.
Subliminal messages.
Some people have said, I noticed you said that 3 times in the video, you know, and all this kind of stuff, you know. But she was clear, but, you know, good for her. She worked through that herself, and worked out that she was just being convinced by a legitimate argument. Good for her.
It's just wonderful. She was probably using the repackaging of cognitive dissonance. I've learned that from your videos. I'm wondering, do you feel like that the existences of religion are really to kind of create this illusion of safety and security? And do you feel like this war on Christmas that we're hearing so much about is because people are mad that that illusion is being attacked?
What is the war on Christmas? I'm not very familiar with that.
Oh, it's an American phenomenon. If you haven't, you should come over and just experience. So it's fabulous. Yeah, we atheists and other religious people run around with machine guns and tear apart folks' Christmas displays.
Well,
it's just a media hype.
Starbucks took Christmas tree off their coffee cups, and now it's just a red cup. So this is evidence of the war on Christmas.
The need for the pressure to put on people to say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas because you might be speaking to a non-Christian. It's becoming more prevalent, and so the backlash by the fundamentalists in America have created on the news everywhere this war on Christmas, and anytime anybody any other philosophical viewpoint pokes its head up, it's like whack-a-mole.
Yes.
The Christian right just smacks you down with
it. It is the baby Jesus' birthday, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it really is. And
obviously, the 25th, we do have his birth certificate somewhere, don't we? I mean, it is ridiculous. It was appropriated as a pagan festival anyway, just to try and integrate everyone together, and it's ridiculous how precious it's become. I mean, I'm not really bothered about Christmas at all, and there are certain moves over here to call it Winterval. I think that sounds clunky and contrived myself. I don't send religious Christmas cards, but I've got nothing against presents and a bit of eggnog.
Right.
I like Winterval. It's like the winter interval. It's Winterval.
Where do I find frankincense, though, if I want to get a gift for the baby? They don't have any at Walmart. I checked.
It's actually available. If you just go to a good incense store, they still have frankincense available today for your olfactory pleasure.
How is it not surprising that you know where the incense stores are, Rob?
Nice. Well, yes, we are here fighting for people's religious freedoms. We can talk about other freedoms at another time. But he's TheraminTrees, Link from Kent, England. Absolutely fascinating to speak to him, listening to him talk, and he's got a really keen mind. The way that you approach the breakdown is, and we talk to people week after week after week, and it's nothing new. We're all atheists, but I really appreciate the work you do, and
thank you very much.
What if you want to push anything? This is we get the last couple of minutes here. What are you working on right now? What's the next big thing for TheraminTrees?
The next video I'm doing is a long a video I'm doing out, knowing that people contact me about, and it's been like that for 8 years. It's the number one theme, so I'm doing something on coming out.
Oh yes.
Are you one of the folks who thinks that we need to all come out under the title of atheism or another title? There's a big thing in America, because atheism is such a dirty word that people want to call themselves secularists and free thinkers and agnostics and sort of avoid it. Do you think we need to embrace that title better?
I really think we do. I think atheism in particular, because it isn't associated with a doctrine, is really important to just put out there as something that's in fact quite neutral. People don't experience it as neutral because it's not neutral in comparison to their beliefs, and it has an impact on their beliefs. But it is actually a very neutral term, and I think we need to neutralize it by using it. And to that end, I think it's really important that we just get a whole variety of voices out there identifying as atheists. But in the end, you have to define yourself how you want. You can't be defined by other people because you just want associated, with something that you don't relate to. But I think, do try through any objections, because they are, they will evaporate before your eyes.
You're going to come to the Reason Rally next year?
I would love to, if I have a budget for these kinds of things. I would really love, I was looking at some of your podcasts and I was thinking I would love to have been in the studio with you. I really would, because I think you've got a fantastic vibe. I think you do a really bloody marvelous job.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
High praise.
We're going to let that be the final word here.
Yes, definitely. I will plug it. Get on his Patreon. I chipped in a tenner for the videos. They're just wonderful. Check them out. I've watched them all. They're definitely not a waste of time.
You heard it here. He's TheraminTrees in his first ever podcast interview. Thanks so much for joining us, my friend, and we will
Thank you.
talk to you later. Stay on the line, as we said, and
Will do.
we'll talk to you in a minute. TheraminTrees, everybody. This has been the Mythicist Milwaukee Show. Join us for Godless Engineer next week. Vive la France! See you later.